Welcome to our deep dive into lateral thinking. We're tackling Edward de Bono's Lateral Thinking, a textbook of creativity. And let me tell you, this book, it's more than just a book.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like a workshop in a way.
Yeah, a creativity boot camp.
Yeah,
De Bono doesn't just tell you about lateral thinking, he gives you the actual tools to use it to make it happen.
exactly. And that's what we're going to be exploring today.
For sure.
How to actually apply this stuff. So, we often hear about vertical thinking, right? That's like our trusty GPS.
Okay, I like that.
It gets us from A to B, it's reliable,
Yeah, it works.
but it only takes us on those predetermined routes.
It does, yeah. It keeps us on the well-worn path.
Right. But what if we need to go off-roading? Explore those uncharted territories of our minds.
That's where lateral thinking comes in, right? De Bono uses this analogy of a monkey trapped by nuts in a jar. It can reach the nuts, but it can't get its fist out.
Oh, I've heard that one.
Yeah. But it's so true. The monkey is so fixated on holding on to those nuts that it misses the simple solution, letting go.
It's like we get blinded by what we think we know.
Exactly. And we do this all the time. We cling to familiar solutions even when they stop working for us.
It's like that aha moment when you finally see the answer that was right there in front of you the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. Except with lateral thinking, you are creating those aha moments, those breakthroughs.
Intentionally, by choice.
Exactly. On purpose.
Yeah.
And De Bono, he gives us a whole toolkit for doing that. One of the most powerful tools is challenging assumptions. Like, remember that example of the pear brandy with the whole pear inside the bottle?
Yeah, how do they even do that?
Right. Most people, they assume the pear was somehow squeezed in there.
Seems impossible though, right?
But the real solution is actually much more elegant. The pear grew inside the bottle.
Wow. You don't even think about that.
We limit ourselves so much when we don't question those assumptions we're making.
So simple, but so profound.
Right. And we do it all the time.
Okay, that's a way better explanation than what I had in my notes. I'm already starting to see those limiting assumptions in my own thinking. So what are some of the other tools De Bono gives us in this lateral thinking toolbox?
Well, there's fractionation, which is basically you take a problem and you break it down into smaller pieces. De Bono uses the example of designing an apple picking machine. Instead of just trying to copy how a human picks apples, you could break it down into the tree, the apples themselves, the act of actually removing them.
I see. You're changing the entire approach.
Exactly. And suddenly you have all these potential solutions. Like you could shake the tree, use suction, maybe even design trees that release their fruit on command.
Whoa, hold on. Trees that just give you the apples. That's next level.
See? You're already thinking laterally.
I guess so. That's really cool, though. And it makes you realize, the way we even define the problem, it really influences the solutions we come up with,
Absolutely.
And I'm guessing that's where this power of reversal comes in, right?
You got it. Sometimes the best way to find a solution is to flip the problem on its head. Remember that story of the shepherd who couldn't get his sheep past a car on this narrow road?
I think so, vaguely.
He couldn't move the sheep forward, so he just reversed them. Simple but effective.
Oh, right. I remember that one now.
Yeah. So simple but so powerful.
Okay, that's making sense. But then there's random stimulation, and that's where I get a little lost, to be honest. Like, how can a random word like noose help solve a problem like, let's say, the housing shortage? Seems a bit gimmicky, don't you think?
I can see why you'd think that, but it's not about the word itself, really.
Okay, so it's more about the...
It's about making connections between things that seem totally unrelated,
Yeah.
It forces your brain to think outside the box.
I see, like a mental jumpstart.
Exactly. So with noose and housing shortage, you might think about the increasing pressure of population growth. Or the rope itself. It could spark ideas about new building materials or flexible housing units.
I never would have thought of that.
See, it's about those unexpected connections.
So it's more like a creative game almost, right?
You could say that. It's about embracing the unexpected and seeing where it takes you. But here's the thing about lateral thinking. It requires a certain mindset shift. You have to let go of the need to be right all the time,
Yeah, that's tough.
It is. But you have to be open to exploring those wrong ideas, those ideas that might lead to those amazing breakthroughs.
So how do we create that space for exploration without getting bogged down in judgment all the time, Is that where PO comes in? This is another one that's always confused me.
You're catching on quickly. PO is an incredibly powerful tool. It really is. It's like saying, okay, let's play with this idea for a second. No judgment. Let's just see where it goes.
I like that.
Right. So imagine you're in a meeting, someone throws out a completely impractical idea.
Happens all the time.
Instead of just shutting it down, you could say, PO, let's explore this a bit.
Okay, so you're not dismissing it outright.
Exactly. It creates a space for play, you know?
Mm.
And in that space, those impractical ideas, well, they might just spark something brilliant.
I love that. It feels so much more collaborative and creative than just shooting down ideas with a no.
Right. It's about opening up possibilities.
But isn't there a danger of getting lost in all that PO? Like never actually making decisions, just playing around with ideas forever?
That's a great question. It's about finding that balance
Yeah.
between the exploration and the decision-making. But de Bono also talks about design, you know?
Add design thinking.
He says it's like a playground for lateral thinking.
It is. It really is.
So how does that all fit in with everything else we've been talking about?
Well, design thinking, it forces you to challenge those ingrained patterns and assumptions we were just discussing.
Okay, I'm listening.
De Bono, he uses this example. It's children designing a potato peeling machine. And one kid, he drew this bucket, like literally sideways inside the machine.
Sideways.
Totally stuck on the image of a bucket, even though it made zero practical sense. So it's like they couldn't see past the traditional idea of what a bucket is.
Exactly. It highlights how easily we get trapped by those familiar concepts, what de Bono calls cliché units.
Cliché units. I like that.
Hey, too.
It's like that five-fingered robot hand we always see in sci-fi movies, right?
Right.
It looks cool, but does it actually need all 5 fingers for the task? I mean...
Maybe not. A simpler design might be way more effective.
Exactly.
De Bono talks about trimming and splitting those cliché units. You get rid of all the unnecessary parts, you know, until you have only the essential functionality left.
Ooh, I like that. Trimming and splitting.
That's a good one.
So you might end up with something totally different, more innovative.
For sure.
That reminds me of those designs inspired by nature, you know, like mimicking a gecko's foot to create super sticky material.
Oh, yeah, biomimicry.
That's it. So it's about understanding the underlying principle and then finding new ways to use it.
Exactly. Yeah, de Bono calls it abstraction and extraction. Instead of getting fixated on the specific form, you focus on the function, the purpose.
Okay, so instead of picking apples, you're thinking about detaching or removing them.
Right, and then suddenly you're open to all sorts of solutions. Shaking the tree, vacuums, even trees that release their fruit when you want them to.
This is blowing my mind a little bit.
It's powerful stuff.
It's like the language we use, it also creates these concept prisons, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
By changing the words, we change the possibilities.
It's true. But this all sounds pretty abstract. I mean, how do we actually practice these lateral thinking skills in our everyday lives? De Bono, he provides a bunch of exercises. One is simply practicing describing things in different ways, you know?
Like instead of just accepting the most obvious description.
Right. Challenge yourself to find alternatives. So, for example, how would you describe a square?
Well, I'd probably say it's a 4-sided shape
Okay, keep going.
with equal sides, and all the angles are right angles. Pretty basic, I know.
That's fine. But what are some other ways to describe it? Maybe in terms of its diagonals, or its area, even how it moves.
Ooh, okay. So you're making me think about it differently.
By pushing past those default descriptions, you start seeing things from new angles.
Okay, I'm getting it. So you
Yeah.
could say it's a rectangle where all the sides are equal.
There you go.
Or a shape made by 2 intersecting lines of equal length that cut each other exactly in half at right angles.
It's getting more complex.
Or even a shape that encloses a certain amount of space, but with the smallest perimeter possible.
See? Thinking laterally.
Whoa! I didn't realize I was doing it.
And that's just one exercise.
Mm.
De Bono also talks about using provocative arrangements of information to kind of trigger those aha moments.
Provocative arrangements? What's that?
It's about shaking up your thinking, making those unexpected connections.
So instead of just listing problems and solutions for, let's say, traffic congestion, you might put the idea of traffic next to something totally different, like water.
Yes. Imagine cars flowing like water through the city.
Okay, that's an interesting image.
Suddenly, you're thinking about fluid dynamics, flexible road systems, maybe even transportation that mimics the flow of water.
Like boats.
Maybe. Or something completely new.
This is so cool. It's like we've been stuck in this linear way of thinking for so long. We've forgotten how to be playful and explore.
It happens. We get stuck in our routines.
But it feels like we've only scratched the surface here of what lateral thinking really has to offer.
We have. But I think this is a good place to pause and recap what we've learned so far.
Okay, good idea.
So lateral thinking, it's about so much more than just coming up with creative ideas. It's a powerful tool for solving problems, making decisions, even for personal growth, honestly.
All right, let's take a minute, kind of recap everything we've learned about lateral thinking. We've been deep diving into Edward de Bono's book, and I've got to say, this is way more than just brainstorming.
It really is.
It's a whole new way of thinking about problems and solutions, and it's something anyone can learn, right?
Exactly. Anyone can practice these skills.
And we've uncovered all these different tools, these techniques, challenging assumptions, generating alternatives, fractionation, reversal, random stimulation. Oh, and of course the power of PO to really open up those creative pathways.
And don't forget, applying all this to design. We've seen how lateral thinking can lead to some seriously innovative solutions.
You know, it's funny, as we've been talking, I've been thinking about how the language we use, it can actually limit our thinking. De Bono talks about that too, doesn't he?
Absolutely. He points out how words can be both helpful and limiting. They help us categorize information, communicate with each other.
Right, they make things easier to understand.
But they can also create these artificial boundaries. He calls them concept prisons.
Concept prisons,
Yeah.
wow, that's a powerful image.
Right. And they limit our thinking.
So those labels we use, I mean, they're supposed to make the world simpler, right?
That's the idea.
But they can also prevent us from seeing how complex and connected things really are.
Exactly.
It's like we're trying to force a square peg into a round hole.
Perfect analogy. And de Bono's solution: challenge those labels, question them, explore the limitations they might be putting on us.
So instead of just saying, this is a chair,
Right.
we could describe its function, its form, how it relates to other things.
All without actually using the word chair.
It's like a mental workout for our descriptions.
It is. And by finding different ways of expressing a concept, you might uncover new insights that were hidden by that familiar label.
This is making me think about all the concept prisons I might be stuck
It
in.
makes you wonder, right?
What labels and assumptions are holding back my own thinking?
That's the big question. I think that's what de Bono really wants us to consider.
It's exciting, but a little daunting too, you know?
It is.
It's like we're being challenged to constantly question and explore things.
And to never just settle for the easy answer.
Exactly.
Lateral thinking, it's about embracing that discomfort, the uncertainty.
And realizing that the most creative solutions, they're usually outside our comfort zones.
Often, yeah.
Well, this deep dive has definitely pushed me out of mine in the best possible way. I feel like I have a whole new set of tools now
That's great.
to approach the world with a fresh perspective and to tackle those problems in a new way.
I love that. And remember, this is just the beginning. Edward de Bono's lateral thinking, it's packed with so many insights, so many techniques.
We could do a whole series on this book.
We could, but for our listeners, I highly recommend checking it out. Grab a copy and start experimenting with these techniques yourself.
You might be surprised by what you discover.
And keep that playful, curious mindset.
It's all about those aha moments, right?
Exactly. Who knows what breakthroughs are just around the corner.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of lateral thinking.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll catch you next time.